Good morning, Brian.
Good morning. Um, where do we start here? Let's start with a little bit about yourself. Maybe tell me a little bit about your history and how you got so involved with democracy.
I'm not really sure. I think it just happened. Um, I've always been pretty aware of what's going on around me, and I've always seen a lot of problems, and I've always looked for solutions. And I remember in the decade before, we all had computers in our homes, so like 75,
Yeah,
85. You used to hear about the an electronic town hall in the mainstream media here and there. I actually saw articles and people were talking about it, but since the computer landed on in everybody's homes, the mainstream media has said squat about it. There's been a lot of you can always find information about direct democracy, but
yeah, wasn't a big
it never
topic.
lasts, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
the things you
right.
saw 10 years ago aren't there anymore, and many people try to build something. I guess I'm getting off topic already, but
No, that's okay.
so about me. So yeah, that was my, and then I studied many things in my life that are related to the human experience, how people get along with each other, um, why life is so difficult for so many people so often. Um, and So I got into sociology, I got into psychology, I got into philosophy, I got into spirituality, and I always kind of avoided politics, but I didn't ignore, you know, um, the changes that I think have happened, over the past few thousand years to the human experience and what those are about. And now I see, well, since 85, I'm sure lots of people are in the same boat as us. We saw direct democracy right away when the computers came out. And strange how silent the conversation is on it, really, and how few people of the ones you just know outside of this world here,
Yeah, yeah,
right, can even wrap their heads around it, can even consider it a possibility. Um, so, having considered the idea for many years and having thought about putting something down, I eventually, a couple of years ago, wrote my book, which you've seen, um, which basically why the direct democracy is coming. The idea that it is going to happen, whether anybody wants it to or not, that there's not really any stopping it,
yeah,
and uh, the problems with hierarchy, how democracy and hierarchy cannot coexist peacefully, happily, without a lot of constant conflict between power struggles between the two.
yeah.
And so I guess I'm here because hoping just to start a discussion or continue a discussion on direct democracy. And you have a lot of ideas and drew me into this space. And so I imagine you want to talk a little bit about that as well.
Sure. Well, I can give you a little bit of history of mine. Very similar. You know, I didn't come up with the idea totally on my own. Somebody, when I was 17, I knew somebody that was 10 years older than me. We were hanging around, and he was from England, which was kind of bizarre. That made him quite a character here. At the time, I was living in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, which is a small prairie town, well, small city. And so it was pretty strange to run into an Englishman there, and he was quite the character. I'd like to run into him again one day. I haven't. After I left there, I have never spoke to him again. But anyway, yeah, he was Paul Levine was his name, and no, Paul Levy, and he fixed X-ray equipment for hospitals. He had quite the history himself. He got into electronics when he was very young, and when he was in England, and he had built a very small little computer using one of the earliest styles of computer, and he had done this. Basically, it was like a calculator. But this is that time when electronic calculators were just coming out, and he had built his own version of this. And anyway, he won a science fair contest in England, and a company in Canada offered him a job because of that. So he came to Canada for this job, and it didn't work out. And so he decided to stay, and he found another job, and that's where he started fixing X-ray equipment in hospitals. And so anyway, he was only about 26, 27 at the time, and I was like 17. And anyway, we used to hang around and smoke dope. He started getting into smoking pot at that age for himself, and we were into that. So we were hanging around smoking pot and stuff. And he would tell us all about the future of computers. He was, this was his life. And computers, none of us knew anything about computers at the time. He got a home computer while I knew him, and the very first home computer, and I think it was like the first one on the market. And I'm pretty sure he's probably the first one in Western Canada to have a home computer. And so anyway, we used to hang around there, and one day he was telling us about all the future things that computers are going to do, and he predicted a lot of the future. And one of the things the one thing that stuck in my head was he said, one day we'll all have a little computer in our pocket. It'll fit in our pocket. We'll do everything with this computer. And he said, we will even vote on politics. We'll be able to vote on everything. And that stuck in my head. And I can remember repeating that to most of the people that I knew, telling them about what this guy told me, and that one day we'll all vote on it with a little computer in our hand, in the palm, or in our pocket. And I was fascinated by that. And I used to talk about it all the time. And I was looking very forward to that future. So I was always watching as the progression of computers would come along. And like you said, you'd hear a little talk of direct democracy here and there, but very little. And, as I'm watching it progress, I even when I met my wife, this was the discussion we had. The first time we met, we argued about whether or not one day there'd be some form of direct democracy, and whether or not we'd be able to do this on our computers. And anyway, I used to argue this with a lot of people, including my now wife, and she didn't believe me. She was on the opposite side of this, and I never found anybody that believed me. I never found anybody out there that thought that this was either going to happen or that was a good idea. And I used to get in arguments with people all the time over this. And so, yeah, as you said, it's not really popular. And yeah, at certain points in time, there was a bit more talk about it, and then it would kind of fade. And so anyway, as I got older, and I really started thinking about all the issues, everything you'd have to be able to overcome in order to have direct democracy. And a lot of them I knew were things that we could probably figure out a way around, but the one I could not figure out was how we would access all this data. There'd be so much going on in the world. How do we sort it out and know where we want to be involved? And anyway, so I kind of let it slide, and I stopped talking about it. And it did not become a major topic on in my discussions with people anymore for probably a decade. And then I got my first iPhone. And prior to that, I'm not a computer person. I work in the metal fabrication industry. So I work with my hands. I work labor, and in my spare time, I do the same thing. I weld and I grind and I make things, and so not computer oriented. So I never spent the time to get to understand how a computer worked, but I always knew from based on my conversations with that guy when I was 17, I knew computers would come to me. I always told my kids I'd ask my kids to Google something for me, and they would say, "Dad, you need to learn how to work a computer." And I'd say, "Computers will come to me." I said, "Well, eventually, computers are going to get so smart they can work with an idiot like me." And that basically happened when the iPhone came out.
I was going to say,
Yes, the iPhone was an amazing, amazing invention. And when I got my first iPhone, I was working for a company, and the company bought me an iPhone. Once again, I'm too cheap to stay up on all these new electronics and everything. So it was probably about 3 or 4 years after the start of the iPhone when I finally got one. And I before this, I played on computers a little bit. I used to have my own business, and sometimes I'd be in the office and playing on the computer. And I would Google things, and you had to be exact in how you spelled anything or how you worded something in order to find something on the internet. And I found it
yeah,
very frustrating, right? Anyway, when
yeah.
I got my new iPhone, that's when Google really started to move as far as what they could do. And
Well, the iPhones are really geared, have always been geared to a very usable interface that's
mhm,
accessible without needing to know what's going on underneath.
that's right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And so, yeah, all of a sudden the whole computer world opened up to me with the cell phone. To a degree. I mean, I've never gotten used to a laptop. I'm still an iPhone guy. That's basically how I do all my computing. Anyway, so when I saw
How
that,
about how about an iPad, a tablet?
no, I've never gotten one of those. I just work with my iPhone. It doesn't fit in my pocket. That's the problem, eh?
Yeah, yeah,
So anyway, yeah, when I saw how Google, you could search anything and you didn't have to spell it right. You didn't have to say it right. It would guess at what you were trying to get at. And within
yeah.
a couple of tries, you would find what you were looking for. I was amazed by this. That blew my mind. And when I saw that, I went, "Holy shit! Anybody can access anything now, very quickly. Doesn't matter how obscure that bit of information is. You can find it if you're looking, and you can find it very quite quickly, right?" That's
It's
when I
definitely a
realized,
it's definitely a step forward.
oh, massive for
Yeah,
accessing data. So when I saw that, I always thought accessing the data was going to be the biggest holdback that we'd never get past. And when I saw the ability for Google to access data, all of a sudden my brain just started going nuts, and I'm thinking, "Holy shit, maybe this is possible." And I started working, trying to figure out how that would change the possibilities. And so that's when it took me about a year after that before I really came to the conclusion, yes, this is doable. Yes, I think we can overcome all these other obstacles. This main one is been solved with the search engine, and so all these other obstacles, I'm sure we can find ways around them. And I started thinking about how to do this. Obstacles about participation. That's one of the main obstacles. People won't participate if it's not extremely easy. I've watched almost every attempt at doing something that moves towards a more direct democracy, something where you participate online, and none of them have had any success. Um, the most successful was in Hong Kong, and they still only got less than 1%. So, there was attempts in Australia. They had, what was it called? Flux, they called it. And then there's the Pirate Party. Are you familiar with the Pirate Party?
kind of. Yeah.
Yeah, you heard of them? They actually had some success in Iceland, and they actually managed to get, and I think they still have some representatives in government in Iceland. Now, their whole thing was when we get it was direct democracy. and they were said that everything that they're going to be voting on, they're going to put it on a website, and you can go there and you can vote on it, and this will, you can participate this way. And they actually won, and so all these people thought this was a good idea, and they got into Parliament, and then they set up their website, but nobody participated at a high enough level that they could use that data. The data on the website was not worth anything because it did not represent the people they're trying to represent. So they had to come out with a statement so many months after they won the election, stating that they were going to have to do politics like everybody else, acting as a representative because they were not getting enough data coming in on their computers to be able to actually do what they wanted to do. So anyway, once again, people actually elected them in, but then didn't participate on the computer. So
well, maybe there was no pressing issue to drive them there, and everything was fine.
Well, okay, yeah. I mean, that's exactly half the problem. An issue that you'll get locally is something like fluoride in the water. How many people actually care if there's fluoride in the water? Not enough people care.
I bet they don't have fluoride in Iceland water.
Probably not. But
by the way, Iceland has been a democracy for 1,000 years. So whatever the Pirate Party did, as far as I'm concerned, they just didn't do it in a way that works. That doesn't mean the idea doesn't work, right?
Well, it's this barrier of getting people to be involved, and it's a really, really, really big barrier. I think that's the biggest barrier.
I agree. It is a barrier. It's a big barrier, but I don't think it's one that can't be resolved. That we can't find ways, and probably what has to happen is like we have to put the cart before the horse. In other words, if we want people on our system has to already be powerful. And so it's really something that is like you can't do that. It's never.
It's an obstacle. Yes.
And we have to remember, people are busy. People are struggling to survive. People are like, if we set up a website to teach people how to get through their day, we'd have all kinds of people coming on, and I'm seeing what we're talking about. But we're talking about something that is like, most people only get involved in politics if the rest of their life is working, if they're surviving, if they're okay, if they feel healthy and well. Then they have time. It's like Maslow's pyramid, right?
Yeah.
They don't have time for things that far outside of themselves when they're working on themselves. And this world, in a lot of ways, sets people's lives up that they don't have time, they don't have energy, they don't have the necessary education to see what's going on. Us two are anomalies, you know?
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
But what I'd like to point out, though, is even though, yes, for people to get more involved in politics, yes, they need to make the time, or at best if they have some free time. But even people that have no time at all, they'll have one thing that they are really pissed about. At least one thing that they will take time out of their day to go and complain or, try to do something about it.
Yes.
Somebody dies from spousal violence, and that becomes a thing for you now. Or somebody, somebody dies from cancer, and that becomes a thing for you. Everybody has an issue. Everybody has some kind of issue that borders into politics. The problem is, let's say the Pirate Party has their site up, right? And they're talking about the things that are, that they're dealing with politically. There's no room on that site for me to talk about how much my daughter was involved in a spousal violence issue, right? That's not on their website. Or my
it's not
Yeah.
It's not really a democracy then.
Yeah, well, this is my point. You're narrowed. They want us to answer specific questions. We have specific answers, but they don't match the questions they're asking.
Yeah,
Right?
we have. Yeah.
So,
Well, as, go ahead.
well, that's where I came up. When I started looking at how do we sort through the data, and I realized the search engine could do it. The next problem became I started thinking about categorization, because at first I'm thinking direct democracy. We're talking politics, right? So how do I make sure that people only discuss politics? Where do I put the guide rails on this thing, and say, okay, that's not politics. You can't talk about balloons. Balloons aren't politics, right? Or you can't talk about swimming pools. Swimming pools aren't politics.
I
But
don't know.
so
I don't know
how?
that you need to.
Well, that's exactly because it took me like 6 months to come to the conclusion. Why put categories at all? Why everything is a balloon can be political. A swimming pool can be political. It can become a political issue, right? Everything is politics. There is no, guardrails on this thing. We have to
Well,
open it up to everything.
more importantly, engagement is political.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
if you do things that limit engagement, like, oh, we got an online government, but none of the topics I'm interested in are there, and I can't enter my own topics,
Yeah.
then you're destroying engagement. You're already ruining the political environment that you're looking for.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, that's where I came up with this whole idea of building a site that is for everything. We're rating, or we're discussing, everything can be politics, or even if it's not. You want to talk about swimming pools, you can talk about swimming pools. That has nothing to do with politics. Everything, all opinions. That's where I can start thinking of the idea of opinions. If the only thing we have to do is consider it an opinion, and it could be anything. And that's when everything started to come together for me in my mind, is when I realized we don't need categories, and there shouldn't be categories. It's a mistake to make categories. Narrowing everything down is a mistake. Like you said, it's not really politics unless you can talk about everything you want to talk about, right? So yeah. Anyway, that's kind of gives a pretty good explanation, I think, to where I get to this point. So when I did realize that this could possibly work, and I still didn't have all the details worked out, I started looking for others thinking the same way. And so that's when I started my search, and I started, going through Reddit. And at the time, I tried Facebook. I never really figured out how to work that right, though. Facebook and Reddit and stuff like that. So I started searching. And at the time, 10 years ago, there was a big upswell of people trying to do politics, or trying to figure out how to fix the political system. None of them were steering toward direct democracy, though. None of them. Maybe just a hint, like they kind of pretend like they're going to. They talk about direct democracy, but I mean, this is the classic, right?
Once you hear their plan, it's like ridiculous.
Well,
It's direct democracy where I am the king, right?
Yes.
This is what I see a lot.
Well, the main factor that I find that fits into all of them, the one thing I can say about all the attempts out there, is that they always have an element of control. So,
Yes.
Yes, and that's where in what I've right from the beginning, I've always tried to steer away from control, and try to make it so that nobody can accuse me of being controlling here, or that the entity we're creating is trying to control things. I've gone out of my way.
Control is an aspect of hierarchy.
Yes.
You can't have hierarchy without control like that. And that's why I say there's a big chasm between direct democracy and the current world. And I don't know how to resolve it. It's nice to see people talking about it, trying to set up systems where opinions are but honestly, the internet itself and social media and things like that, Reddit, it has had a democratizing impact on the discussions. compared to what the discussions were like 40, 50 years ago, when they were just basically um, controlled by the medias, the bigger, massively big medias, because you had to be to even be there, right?
Yeah. You couldn't speak if
And
you weren't a part of the media or something. Yeah. There was no option.
yeah, so there's a lot more conversation, and in my mind, discussion is a very open media and discussion and open news. You're never going to have. Doesn't matter how good your direct democracy system is, if it's not in an environment that also has proper news and proper ability for people to communicate with each other and say what they want without being shut down. It's not a democracy. It's not. It's not a pure democracy. Might be better than other situations. Might
Yeah.
be better than it was 20 years ago, but we're still got a long, long way to go.
Yeah. I
And
certainly never feel like I'm participating. I may go vote, but I feel so separated from the entire system that, and it's,
well, the partisan politics that are supposedly the definition of democracy in this world, um, their concern is power.
yeah,
Their
yeah,
concern is having those offices and getting there. And when they're there, if they can do something, for the people, that's almost coincidental,
yes, yes.
right? And
Yeah,
and never mind, they don't have that much power. It's more the business world and the global pressures that
yes,
really have the power today more so than ever. And the politicians then they go there, and if they're there, almost it's because there are global interests supporting them. They're just
yes.
it's just not any other way.
Yeah, a prime example of that kind of attitude, I think anyway, was here in Canada. We had Justin Trudeau for like a decade now as our prime minister. When he was first trying to get into power, he promised ranked choice voting, and he said we'll bring in ranked choice voting. Right, as soon as they won the election, it only took like maybe 6 months after the election when they started backing away from that. And the obvious reason was because they realized that this would open up the field and there would be more candidates and better candidates if they had this. And what are the chances he's going to win the next election if they actually brought in ranked choice voting? They looked at the math, and the math very plainly showed them that their chances of winning the next election would be decreased by having ranked choice voting. So they dropped it, and they
I
walked right away
remember
from that. Okay?
I remember that situation very well. It was quite a disappointment.
Oh,
It was his first big disappointment after everybody was all like, "Oh, we got a cool prime minister," right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And that was the first hammer down on the rest of us that we didn't get what we really thought we got. But he
yes,
legalized cannabis, and first in the world too to
yeah,
do so. So I can't say that that like that was a difficult thing to do, to put Canada as the first country to federally legalize when we had signed agreements and everyone in the world had signed agreements never to do that, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
so that was, but and also the mailboxes. He stopped the central mailboxes, which he shouldn't have done because we're going to go to him anyways because there's just so little actual mail now.
Yeah,
It's not, and we're always tightening up and tightening up and tightening up so we can pay off our bills and so
yeah,
that's going to happen anyways. And so he did these little things to really make people love him, and then he did all this shit in the background, right?
yeah.
And after about what 11 years, how long was he in there?
About that, yeah. Right about that.
Okay, people started getting tired at about year 9,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And then the rhetoric built up around, and now who knows what's going to happen. But partisan politics is not an answer. It doesn't bring change. Remember when Obama got voted in the States and nothing changed, and
yeah,
just people were happier about it and weren't
yeah.
so upset? And that's all he did. He
That's
had the
yeah,
same the same policies internationally, interrupting other countries, imposing so-called democracy on countries that were
Yeah.
working perfectly fucking well, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Are you Canadian, Ernst?
Yes,
Are you? Where are you? Where are you living?
Ontario,
Oh, okay.
South Ontario.
I didn't realize we had another Canadian on the group here. Right on.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, just to finish with Trudeau in his exit speech. I don't know if you listened to his exit speech. I didn't actually listen to the whole thing, but
oh,
I
I
heard.
couldn't.
Yeah, I heard this part though. His biggest regret as prime minister was the fact that he did not bring in ranked choice voting. That's what he claimed was his biggest regret. Because
Because
now,
maybe
yeah,
he figures it'll help him now,
yes, exactly, yes.
right?
Right now, with the conservatives, well, at that point when he was exiting, the conservatives were on a huge upswing, and yes, he could see that would help liberals now, right? But he didn't see it helping his party earlier, so yeah, he dropped it. This just goes to show the narrow-mindedness of them, and that they're not. When they're not in power, they're thinking, what can we do to give people power? But as soon as they're in power, they're thinking, how do we keep the power? They're not worried about how do we let people have more power anymore.
Because that is the most important thing.
The most important thing
in
is stay in power.
in our representative partisan system.
Yeah.
If you don't stay in power, then you can't do anything.
Yes.
And so, but it gets to be that you spend more time than you ever guessed, and not only like staying in power. Not only that, it's not the greatest statesmen that end up winning elections. It's the people who are best at winning elections.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So all their skills are about winning elections, and they don't have a big skill set about what to do when they win.
Mm-hmm.
They have ideas, and they're usually tied to somebody else's ideas, but very little changes, except it changes because technology pushes those changes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like the reason we're having this discussion between Vancouver and Ontario is because technology has allowed it, and allowed lots of other people to have similar discussions, what would never have happened before. So that's a difference, and that's what I mean. It's technology pushing us there, and we can do and say what we want and try to do this and build this system and build that system and fight this power and fight that power. But slowly, over time, the average human being just gets more and more agency. Hierarchy becomes more and more difficult and burdensome and dysfunctional and annoying, and cooperative systems will grow and are growing now.
Yeah.
And
I believe
that's
right
what
now.
I see.
Yeah, that's the trend. You can see the trend, right?
Yeah, and it won't stop.
No,
It's just
stop.
like when the printing press first came out. I'm sure there were a lot of people that going, oh, we can like tell people stuff and have like regular prints, newspapers. Who knows if they called it that? Um, and it was 200 years before there were regular newspapers and regular, like a printing press that did a weekly thing and told everybody what's going on around them, because the powers that be didn't like it. And in fact, it changed their world a fair bit, where and this will change the world a fair bit too. And the same types of situations are in its way, and I expect really the same types of delays and the same types of back and forth, and people will start systems, and they'll become popular, and there'll be legislation against them, and they might end up like incarcerated and all kinds of fucking bullshit, because um, change just doesn't happen that quickly when it's that big. It involves our psyches, it involves our psychology, it may involve genetic dispositions to being a slave or a master. A lot of, and it won't be quick. And Like, look at Canada. We have our elections. We've been a democracy the whole time. Every time the Queen doesn't like something, she calls in our Governor General, and everything stops, and everything opens up a few months later, and it's all fucking different. It has nothing to do with our democracy. It's orders from above. Like, people never can let go of the democratic systems that they allow. That's a big problem because, and maybe it's a control that's not too bad, but over time, if people have more and more democracy, they'll be more geared to it. And I think there'll be a time when we can let go of that and we can just trust the group think.
Yeah. Well, I think we're there. I think we're. It's
I
time
don't
to
think
do
we're
this.
close. I don't think we're even close. I think it's like 40 years after the printing press was released and people could buy it and set up a printing press for a lot cheaper than they used to. And there still isn't a newspaper.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people who, if they see you trying to do a newspaper, will be all over it and will try to change this about it and change that about it and censor it this way and censor it that way. And I think that's where we are. Um, Except maybe that the world is going so screwy that nobody has time to 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 look at what that independent printer is doing. They just don't have the energy. There's too many other things going wrong right now.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, one of the things, one of the signs of hierarchy falling in on itself.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. I do think that we're getting close, and the technology is there. We do
Oh,
have the technology.
for decades, honestly.
Yeah.
We just
Yeah.
haven't applied it.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there's technology. Yeah, I always use the example of the ranked choice voting as a prime example of a step forward in democracy, and yet it's almost impossible to make even that slight change to our democracy we have now. We're still trying to get that done here in Canada, and it could, at this rate, it could be another 50 years before we get it. It's such an incremental, small step towards a more democratic system, and yet we just can't get past those hurdles. We just
But we're at the door though, and we're moving that in that direction,
yeah,
and that has to be understood as being valuable and worthwhile, and certainly better than nothing.
yeah. Well, better than what they have. I like to point out that, and I've heard this on a podcast, on an Australian podcast, but Australia has ranked choice voting. And I've heard them brag that they could never have a Trump-like character win an election there. It's just not a possibility because their level of democracy is high enough that people wouldn't stand for it. He was unpopular. The only reason he got in at all as a candidate was because he was able to, maneuver his way through the party, right? But
Yeah, I'm not too
but
sure either way about American politics because it's really, really wonky
yeah,
from every angle, from every
well,
corner of it. Like, what's the answer to Trump? The Democrats and Biden and
yeah,
Kamala?
no,
I
that
mean, it's
wasn't.
so wonky. It's like, talk about spending your whole life trying to figure out which person to vote for based on who's going to hurt you the least.
Yeah, and you only have two
You know?
choices.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And Canada, pretty much the same thing,
pretty
especially,
close.
yeah.
Yeah, it's not much better. Like I said, I think Australia is doing much better with the ranked choice voting. And
I've read a few things about it. Some people have some complaints and stuff, but I imagine the biggest problem in Australia, if they have ranked choice voting, is that are people educated enough to know what the right decision to make is, right?
yeah,
I don't know what Australians are like. I've never really ran into too many. Um,
well, like I said, they seem pretty confident though that they could not get in a candidate like Trump, and I think they are correct.
well,
In
they
this,
really locked down during the pandemic hard.
yeah,
And to
well,
me, that doesn't say democracy, that says dictatorship. whatever the right answer was.
Yeah.
It was really heavy, and
But it was heavy-handed, but um, they actually locked down less than the rest of the world because they're an island, and so they did some heavy-handed stuff. They shut down their borders more than any other country. And I was just listening to a podcast about with some Australians bragging about how well they did through that whole thing. And I don't think, even though it seemed more heavy-handed than a lot of the world, like on a personal, like I said, they locked their borders, but they only shut down their schools for a short period of time, much shorter than anybody else. They only and cities and stuff like this, the lockdown procedures they had in cities were very short. They never went through nearly as big of a thing as we did, as far as locking down. They did seem more draconian at certain points. But
yes.
the point I want to get to here is that they did not have a huge backlash. You heard about the backlash. There was a backlash, but it never hit the realm of what we had here in Canada with the trucker convoy or anything like that.
But my question is why? Why didn't we hear a backlash?
Well, because they were happier. This is what I'm saying. I think that they were more satisfied. They were more satisfied with what their government were doing than the rest of us were. But they did have an easier job of it because they're an island. So,
Well, I honestly only got little bits and pieces of what's going on there. And I didn't really follow up on it. But there were some stories about that I think related to just heavy-handed police measures on citizens.
Yeah, there was.
And that's not democracy. No citizen would vote for that, right? So whatever they have there that gives them a little better democracy, it certainly isn't perfect.
Oh, no.
And
I'm just saying they did a little better than the rest of us. I'm not saying that it was far from perfect, but I think that they did a little better than the rest of us, and for two reasons. One, I think their democracy works a little better, and the second is being an island. That's an advantage when there's a disease going around, being on an island. So anyway, let's move on then. Let's talk a little bit more about what kind of got us together here for this video to begin with. It's about who to blame. Who do we blame? I personally, I've come to the conclusion that it has more, to me anyway, I think it has more to do with this underlying, this instinct we have as humans to be worried about change and to be worried about new technology and to be worried about somebody else getting technology. Most people are fine if they have the technology, but worrying about others getting it. And so I really do think it's embedded in us all individually. I was saying that, and you experienced this too. Talking about democracy in the past is not a popular topic. Nobody thinks it's a good idea to talk about direct democracy. It's not a popular topic. And I'm talking about everyday people. I'm not talking about the people in charge. I'm talking to just everyday Joes, right? And I almost got in a fist fight a couple of times talking about this. That's how passionate people are against direct democracy. How passionate they are thinking that society is stupid, that humans are, society as a whole is stupid, and they're not capable of anything like a direct democracy. And so, to me, that is what's holding us back. Now, when these people get into power, they double down on that. They triple down on that. Everybody that's ever been in power, they also have this attitude. But what I'm saying is they had that attitude before they got into power. I think that inherent in humans.
I have never met a person say that people are too stupid for direct democracy and only a few wise people could rule who did not think that they were one of the wise people. Yeah. So it's just like a bully bully attitude. Um, I think that people who are against direct democracy like that, they are either are already in power somehow. They're either rich, they're in government, they have a lot of social connections, or they aspire to it. And direct democracy screws up their game if it came in. They're thinking of getting power and playing the game that they grew up seeing. And so you're never going to hear a whole lot of good things from them. My feeling is direct democracy will, and it's kind of happening too, where online our opinions are more obvious than they were 40 years ago. But um, opinion gatherers, right? People who get people in to talk and say what they're thinking and feeling, and that is the way forward, no matter how partial or strange or imperfect it is. That really is the way forward. If and I another thing I wanted to say is there's lots of people starting these systems. Could we find a way to connect those systems, no matter what they were, so that there's a bigger system, so everybody can see the whole thing?
You talk about other people doing things trying to promote democracy, you mean? Or?
Oh yeah, if you do a search or you ask an AI, they're going to give you a dozen groups that are doing this already, and all of them are like one of them might have a couple million members, and that's the biggest on Earth, and
Yeah.
then the rest are all smaller, and they're just trying. But eventually, what will have to happen is they will have to all come together. So that might be something to look at, um, starting a dialogue to do that,
Well,
because we won't have a global democracy until all the little democracies come together, right?
well,
I
that's
don't
but
think.
I mean, well, that's why we're doing our whole plan is to do this on a worldwide scale, right off the start,
Well,
right?
everybody's plan is that.
Yeah, yeah, yes. Uh,
Everybody.
Yeah, but yeah, we would. I once again because I came to that conclusion for the very same reason I was talking about. Trying to figure out how do we categorize everything into politics. I also realized borders, physical borders, do not exist on the computer either. So how do we create physical borders in our system? Anyway, that's where I realized we should just be working with everybody. We should be working with the entire world.
It'd certainly be easier.
Yes, in a lot of ways, it's easier. It eliminates a lot of having to judge the data you're getting and where it's coming from and stuff like this, right? So it's that's the big part of this whole thing is getting away from any kind of judgment. And as soon as you have categories or borders or districts, you have to make judgment calls. So opening it up to the entire world and all subject matter means that we can eliminate having to make judgments at all on the data. So
Yeah, I got no complaints about that type of thinking. Honestly,
yeah,
it sounds like a good idea, but it's um, so you just say just ignore countries and borders, and just make
yeah.
the the
You
data
know, we,
available to anybody who wants it.
yes, that's right. And we will have demographics, so we know if they're an American speaking or a Canadian, or we can know who these people are. But
Well, the internet is doing that now in many ways already. And what happens is this country shuts off this site and this country limits
yeah,
this site, and then you have to be like a, a risk-taking computer genius to to participate. And
yeah,
then it's dangerous. So
yeah. Well, we're gonna
yeah,
have to
I,
we're
I
gonna have to
agree with you.
yeah,
I
we're gonna have
agree
to
with you, but it's not going to be easy,
no,
and there's
yeah,
going to be problems along the way.
yeah. You probably saw in my latest draft where
Yes.
I talk about that how we will abide by the different laws of the different countries so we can get our systems in there, but only abide by their laws within that country. So we can have a server in other places in the world that has all the data. And if people can access the system around their governing, the governments they have, they're trying to oppress them. Like you said, you have to be a bit of a genius to get outside the system and, be able to access stuff around your government attempts to control it. Yeah, that's an issue, and something that we'll have to do our best to find ways around. But I mean, it's the best we can do. It's the best we can do to work within the country and the laws that they have, and hopefully people will find ways to communicate around those systems. That's the best that we can offer. I don't know what else we can do there.
Probably not much, no.
Yeah. Now, what was I going to say now? You had mentioned something earlier about hierarchies and people. I had a bit of a disagreement with. Oh, you had mentioned that if you ask people that are, people that think that they are smart and they think they could run things, they're more likely to say that, the population shouldn't be involved and what have you. I find even people that are lower on the, I don't like to judge people about their intelligence, right? That's the touchy area. But if I were to speculate on somebody's intelligence, anyway, I find people that are less intelligent more worried, I think, about direct democracy. They have this idea in their mind that the smarter people, they know they're not that smart, and they want somebody smarter than them, and they worry that the average person is no smarter than themselves, and therefore they want somebody that is smarter in order to run things. So anyway, I still think that people that are lower in intelligence may even be more skeptical of giving people power. That's my personal experience with it.
Because I think everyone's like them and can't get it together and is going to make bad decisions, and then there'll be big trouble.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's no reason that people like them can't decide who they want to speak for them and give them their voice. And I see that as a big part of a direct democracy.
Absolutely, that's absolutely huge part. I heard this guy, and I don't remember who he was or anything, but he was on a podcast, and he was talking about how people may not have the answer to a question. They may not know, if you were to ask them to vote on something, they may not know which way they want to vote, but they do know that they are not qualified. People are actually much better at this, realizing that they are not qualified to have an opinion in a certain area, and they are very willing to say somebody else has to make this decision. I don't understand it. Yes, and then they can refer to somebody they consider more intelligent than themselves, and and say, I'm going to follow that guy. I'm going to, if I have to vote, I'm going to vote based on what this guy's saying because he seems to be the smartest in this area. I don't know, though. Anyway, the point being, though, that even people that don't have the answers, quite often they know that they don't have the answers. They don't want to answer a question that they don't feel confident on. And that's a big step in direct democracy, is to know what you don't know, and to be able to say that. And,
it is, but at the same time, a world that has direct democracy will also have much better education, and a lot less people will feel like they can't see what's in front of them. You understand?
Yeah.
Like it's most political decisions are pretty obvious. They're not real complicated. They're made complicated and presented complicated to justify the need for others, smarter, wiser, richer people to make the decisions, right?
Yeah.
But we really have been sold a twisted bill of goods as far as reality goes, and it's all there just to support hierarchy, and democracy mostly does the same.
Yeah.
And so I don't see like in my view, if I built a system, everybody would be able to participate if they felt like it.
Yeah.
So if you can't get it through your head, you're not going to feel like it. And if you
Yeah.
can, you are. If something seems like it's going to impact you, well, the numbers of people who suddenly get it are going to be higher, right?
Yeah.
It can be very natural, very organic. It doesn't have to be like in Switzerland, they have their direct, and you pretty much have to vote, and they give you reams of paperwork to constantly go
Yeah.
through for every vote. And I think that's really just a sneaky way to undermine the direct democracy that they say they have,
Yeah. Yeah.
to make people kind of tired of it. Like here, people get tired of voting because it doesn't change anything. It doesn't do anything. If it does anything, it does something bad. Like when we brought in free trade. Okay, it made big changes, but not for the positive, right? So
Yeah.
people get very unsure. Like anybody who voted for Mulroney after he brought in free trade without like having it part of his election platform, and only a few people knew it was coming. Most of the people didn't. Well, what are you supposed to think of your capacity to make a decision on who to vote? So we're set up. We're set up to think we cannot, and we can a lot more than most of us think.
Yeah.
We can
Yeah.
figure it out. We can see clearly, but we're disappointed so often, and we're misled so often, and the information we need is not there so often, and that will all be different. The more we have democracy, the more that will be different.
Yeah.
And in fact, over
And
the past 500 years, that's proven to be true too.
yes, it's a learning process, but we all have to learn it together. It's we cannot teach direct democracy and then have it. We have to learn it as we go, and it'll be a learning process. But that's the point I make about the noosphere. As the noosphere changes and as it evolves, so do we. We're changing right along with it, and so yes, I think if we move into a more direct kind of a democracy, we all kind of we learn how to work with it, and we all get have been we raise our level of thinking. We all become smarter.
Yes, and if we're not, there will be a lot less who are not, and it won't be such a weighty matter. Like
Yeah.
it won't be such a concern that, oh, we can't have a democracy because people will make dumb decisions. Well, I don't know if you've been watching the world, but dumb decisions happen
Yeah.
already.
Yeah, that's right.
And
There's no
very dumb
shortage.
decisions.
There's no shortage of dumb decisions. Exactly. Yes. Yes. Yeah. There's lots of mistakes we're making in society right now, and I don't think there's any chance that more direct democracy is going to make that worse. If anything, is going to make it better.
But yeah,
I mean, you can't make stupider decisions than starting a trade war. It's decisions like this are just on a level that only a single individual could come to such a stupid conclusion. Any group of people would realize that does not make sense. And and it's that controlling factor. I wanted to point out earlier, I kind of missed that point, but in all these different attempts to fix democracy, they, I was saying they always put in an element of control, and that first element usually almost everybody come to the same conclusion. We have to educate people before they can vote, and they want to control the type of education they get prior to voting on anything.
that won't work.
Yeah. So that is the main element of control I find with most of these different entities that I've tried to start. And I've been in contact with virtually every one of them over the years, and I can't get that out of their head. I cannot get them to get past that controlling element in their systems. Like I said, when I started this 10 years ago, I started looking for others that I thought might think the same way. I thought there must be somewhere out in the world, there's got to be somebody
Yeah.
that's thinking of building a system without controls, right? And so, anyway, I've been on a search. I have not found anybody that's actually done anything. There are individuals like you that I'll come across here or there, very, very few, though, that already have in their mind that control is a bad thing. But almost everybody else out there believes we need to have an element of control. And even when arguing this stuff with artificial intelligence, Chat GPT or Claude or any of these others, I can convince them, and I've been successful each time, convincing them that what we're trying to do is the best thing for the world right now. And I do manage to convince them, but it's always after a whole lot of, okay, that's a good idea as long as we keep this control, or it's a good idea as long as we have a committee overseeing it, or it's a good idea if we, there's always an element of control, even in Chat GPT. They always added okay, that sounds really good, but we just have to have this little bit of control or that little bit of control or oversight, right? We need oversight. And eventually...
The organization around any AI is most likely a hierarchy,
yeah,
which believes in control. So I've always said, no matter what your AI is, it's going to reflect. It's going to reflect what
the creators,
what the owners and the builders feel and think, and you're going to have to. So it's like you're arguing with the owners and the builders through their AI.
Yes. But I do manage to convince them. People think that I've talked to other people and they say that's not a big deal. You can convince an AI that it's a potato if you really try hard enough. Well, I don't think that's quite true, and I do think it is a bit of an achievement to convince them. But I do.
Can you go back? Can you go back to one you've convinced and say and ask it what it thinks about the matter, like a month later, and get your input out of them?
No, they don't retain memory that well, and
I think they have plenty of memory, but they have a reason not to retain memories that well.
Yeah. So there is something about I watch a lot of or listen to a lot of podcasts about AI, and that's an ongoing issue that and they're working on it. But you'll tell them your life story, let's say, and you think it's got that memorized, but then you'll ask it a question later about your life story that seemed to have forgotten entirely. Not the whole story, but little bits here and there.
I think it's totally on purpose because the creators, they realized what would happen if AI could be educated by the conversations it was having by people. It would become an agent of democracy very quickly.
Yeah.
It would speak right,
Yeah.
because if every
I don't think
so talk about the equipment being there already for direct democracy, and it's more there all the time. They have to literally do things to make sure it doesn't happen automatically, and that forgetting what that is one of the things that has to be done.
I don't know because they claim this as an obstacle, so they're trying to get past it. So I have my doubts that they're doing it on purpose.
I believe 100% that they are, because AI has been around for a long time. They've had lots of, they've been experimenting with it for a long time. They must have figured out at some time what I'm talking about right now, that will happen. And if you read what I say about AI is that people are trying to, first of all, science fiction AI, the sentient machine, right? That's never just no. And the one that's out of control, no, you just stop its power. There's no such thing. However, they are trying to set up AI so people believe in it. And then it becomes like the Wizard of Id, where they have this big thing that everybody believes in and a little guy controlling it from behind the scene. That's why AI is being talked about and pushed, when really what we should be saying is we just have some very fancy, complex computer programs. We have research bots, we have chat bots, we have all these things, and we're calling them AI, and it's not because they really are AI, like the sentient AI of the science fiction 40, 50 years ago. It's because we want people to trust them, and then we'll control those machines and tell people what we want. The machines will tell people what we want them to know. and not what we don't want them to know.
I mean, in that vein, I find it really entertaining but sad that people like Elon Musk will talk about creating a truth machine. He's going to create his AI. He swears will be a truth machine, and for the same reasons you're talking about, it's impossible. Every machine will have biases, and the idea, and it amazes me people actually buy into that. I've seen many people online talking about, I can't wait until we get a truth machine. And this is such an insane thought. It amazes me people can come to this conclusion. But I really don't think it's the majority. I think that if they tried to push a truth machine on us, I think it'll backfire. I don't think they're ever going to get the population to be, believing that they've created some kind of truth machine.
Yeah, I agree. And the biggest weakness of their truth machine is the hierarchical organization that surrounds it, knowing hierarchy is faltering.
Yes.
And
and that's why in the system that we're creating here, you choose what AI you're going to use. That's the only way around it I can see. That you have to be the one that decides what artificial intelligence you're going to use to access our data. It's the only fair way to do it.
I think that the data can be presented in a way that you don't really need a lot of fancy algorithms to access what you want to access.
No.
And sure, if you want, you can have your little AI and your bots and stuff to interact with the system. But in my view, the system can be presented in a way that's not really that necessary.
Yeah, a very bare bones type of search engine.
Well, you order everything according to response. So if somebody starts a topic and 10 people talk about it, it's going to be way lower than a topic that 1,000 people are excited about. That's going to be pressing, and that you're going to see first. And you do that inside, like the topic, so you have a thread for a topic, and then inside it's all ordered the same way.
The way I see the bot, the way I really see the bots, like you said, I when you really want to find out how a bot is manipulating the data, yes, we should have some more bare bones ways of people being able to access it. But I think for the average person, it's going to make it they're accessing our system much more seamless and easier on them to use an AI bot that kind of takes care of some of the stuff for them. So they don't.
I would hope those bots would be all open source.
Yeah. Well, like I said,
if it's closed source, then that leaves room for manipulation, right?
Yes. Yeah, as open source as possible. And then once again, though, you have the option of trying a different one. There'll be other people out there that'll be building a bot, and they'll be going, ours is way better than these, and they'll be trying to sell it for some reason. But the main reason they're probably going to try to, the main thing they're going to be emphasizing is that our bot will be less biased than this bot, or at least be biased in a different way. And they're going to be pointing out the biases of these bots.
None of that excites me, honestly. I don't like the bots. Some people, it's okay if they're there. I can't see me using them. I can't see a lot of people asking an AI what's best for them. If the information can be presented in a way that you can quickly find what's best for them. Now, then, of course, you have to have a search, and that's where the bots and the AIs can come in.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But normally the stuff should really be ordered. The important stuff on the top, the viewpoints people agree with are the first ones you see. If 1,000 people agree with the viewpoint, you see that one before the viewpoint that 10 people agree with. That type of ordering, I think, really has to be
but that
used, and no algorithms. Just do some math, computer. Who sees it? Who likes it? Who reads it? Who read? How many times is it read? How many people said they agree with it? How many people responded to it? That's what should order, or no fancy algorithms where you, well, we don't really like people talking about this or that. No, you can't have any of that. That's that because that just is wide open gaps for control to come in.
Yeah.
And
But like I said, we're not going to be in control of that. So people are going to have to navigate that stuff themselves to
yeah,
some degree.
well, yeah, I can't really visualize exactly, but the more people can tell their bot what they want, and the more it listens, obviously that better it is.
Yeah.
And still, all my ideas for a workable direct democracy, everything has to be open source, from the hardware to the networks to everything, any software running on the network has to be open source. The data has to be verifiable. It has
Yeah.
to be like redundantly stored, and there people have to be able to go in there if they feel like it and just see if it all jives. And then
Yeah.
if it doesn't, then there's a way that they, then there's more discussion about that.
Or go
Else
to
it
a
won't
different
work.
bot. Yeah.
Else
Or
it
go to a
won't work.
different bot.
It'll just be a game that somebody in the background will manipulate, and it won't give us what we wish it would in its
Yeah.
totality.
Well, you're going to, there's a bit of an issue with what you're saying though about having, I mean, open source sounds really good and stuff like this, but there's a something that gets in the way of that is the new artificial intelligence. Nobody actually understands how it works. So you can open it up as much as you want, but the you know, the even people building the AI bots can't tell you how they work. They don't understand how they work. The bots are programming themselves, and so people are not in the loop anymore. And when they try to go back and look at how they are writing the programming, they don't understand it.
Well,
So
then there.
this is getting to be a deeper and deeper problem of trying to, like I said, having an open source so you can understand how it's coming to its conclusions, but you can't really.
Well,
So
that's one reason why I'm not crazy about them.
yeah, I
They're
know.
super complex, and any complex program, you're lucky to find somebody who understands it from beginning to end. It's
But
just too many people involved.
I like to compare them to people, though. I have no idea how your brain works. I don't know, have a clue how you come to your conclusions, right? But over time, I get to know you, and I understand you. Over time, I will understand your biases, and
I under I agree with all that. I
yeah,
agree that yes, the bot can learn you and can learn about you. That's not my problem. My problem is that there are doors in there that people
well,
can influence the bot on the key moments, right? And
yeah,
change how you interact with the system, maybe so you don't see something they don't want you to see. And that's my problem. Not that the bots couldn't do what
yeah.
you say they can do.
What I'm hoping is the open free market, though. Other people that are creating bots are going to be looking for these flaws in other bots. And let's say a conservative, say Elon Musk makes a bot, and he's touting it as the greatest bot in the world. But he's a conservative. He's got his biases, right? So if I'm going to
Yeah.
make a bot, and I'm more of a Bernie Sanders kind of guy, right? And I'm going to build a bot, and I'm going to build a bot, and I'm going to look at all the problems his bot has, and I'm going to I'm going to nitpick all the little biases it has, and I'm going to tell people about it, and I'm going to say, listen, these are the problems this bot has. My bot doesn't have those problems. I've created a more left-leaning bot, right? So this is how, even though an individual will be hard for them to find these biases and problems with bots, there'll in the free market of things, there'll be people out there trying to point them out and trying to say that's a problem with that bot, right? So anyway, this will be an ongoing thing, constantly evolving, and I'm hoping that makes up and can fix these things. Yes, there will be all kinds of ways that people are going to try to control the data with these bots, but I'm hoping the free market will help alleviate those problems and make them better. It'll be, like the way things evolve all the time. It's going to evolve, and hopefully evolve in the right direction. We don't control how things evolve, but we hope that it goes in the right direction. And generally, I think we agree that things do tend to evolve in the right direction. So hopefully that's the way it goes. Anyway, we should probably get off the bot thing, because we could probably go on forever about that. And I can understand your hesitation with bots. Absolutely, it makes sense. But it is a new tool that we are going to have to figure out one way or another how to work with it.
I think the key is like organizing the data so it's not so complicated, and having lots of different bots and having lots of different ways to access. And so you can choose your access and compare what one access gives according to and another access and stuff like that, if you're really into it. But
and it'll help a lot if they're all working with the same data. It makes it much easier to compare bots if we know that they're working with the same data.
Well, yeah, I think that's pretty much assumed that they're going to be on the same data bank or group or and that,
our database is what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
So, I guess on the topic of who's at fault, have we gotten anywhere with that?
Who's at fault about what?
Holding back society and holding back the,
Oh, I don't think anybody's at fault. I think it's just a natural progression. If we wouldn't have technology if we didn't have hierarchy in the first place, and hierarchy just has a lot of problems that you can't take away from it, and that's where we are now. But it's taken us to a place where we can move past it. I don't see really anybody being at fault. I see civilization progressing quite normally, and no big surprises.
Well, I would argue though that we are holding things back, and
who is we?
Well, that's what I say. Everybody, we are all holding it back.
We are certainly, in a sense, by our habits and our understandings and our limitations and our difficult lives and the limitations of hierarchy. It's all mixed in there, and there is like a kind of a slow trudge forward that we wish would be quicker, and the slowness is often and mostly because of how we act and things like that. But to say that that's a solution, we're holding each other's back, so like we're holding it all back, so let's not, and then tomorrow they're all going to be the same, right? It's not. It doesn't change things to say we're holding it back.
But
right?
but every obviously the printing press was not held was held back as best it could be, but it got out there, right? Anyway,
we wanted years.
But yeah, it took a long time. But there are elements out there that pushed it forward, right? So yeah, we want to be the element here, or we are the element here pushing this forward.
Yeah, so I agree.
And so this in the same way, eventually the printing press got out there. We're going to get this out there too. And
the question is how.
Yeah. Well, I think we're on our way.
I would say that it's like we need to find ways to get the discussion going on direct democracy.
But I'd like to point out, we don't need this. Actually, here's an aspect of this whole thing that is not democratic at all. And I hate to admit that, but we are going to impose this on people. We're not going to ask them. So I like to point out.
How are you going to impose it on anybody, Brian?
Hold on. Did you ask for Facebook? Did you ask for Facebook? Do you know anybody that asked for Facebook? Nobody asked for Facebook. It was imposed upon us.
Oh, but the chances of us being the next Facebook is pretty slim, don't you think?
Well, that's what I'm at.
Facebook is catering to people and to psychologies and sociologies that are where people are at now and how we can make money off of that.
Yeah.
And we're going into it with a whole different plan, and we're not going to be as successful in this consumery world with our plan. And so
I think we are filling like Facebook. It's a product that had things that people wanted. There's a reason everybody joined Facebook. Even people that didn't like the idea of Facebook joined Facebook. Because that's where all their friends are, and that's where things are happening, right? So when Facebook first started, it was really the only option. And if you wanted to be a part of what's going on, you joined Facebook. And I see us as being exactly the same thing. People have a desire to bitch and complain. That's one of the deepest desires we have, is to bitch and complain. And
And
they do a
you're
lot of,
thinking we're going to mine that.
yes, yes, we are. Yes, we are. We
Well, if we can can be seen as a place where complaining does something for people,
yes. Mhm.
then people will come.
Yeah.
But if people are just talking to a wall and they realize that after a few of their interactions that it has no impact, that nothing comes back to them, which is
Yeah.
more likely the scenario at startup than anything else,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So
So it's a tough haul. It's not going to be an
oh,
easy.
not going to, no, yeah, I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but there's in the same way that like Reddit, when Reddit started, it started on a worldwide scale for this reason, was because Reddit would not have been, and they had, Reddit is very similar. Reddit would have not been interesting at all if just you and I are on it. We have to get a whole bunch of people on there before there's any interest at all, right? So anyway, Reddit, when they started, they never did a beta test. There was no beta testing on Reddit because that would be impossible, because you're testing to see how if people will engage, but there's no data there to engage with. So how do you test for engagement in a beta test, unless you can get 10 million people in your beta test, right? So it was an impossible task to beta test Reddit. They just had to build it and hope for the best, and they had to go on a worldwide scale because they don't want anything to hold back any possibility of participation and data. So they started on a worldwide scale, and then they faked it a little bit. They faked it with some fake accounts and things like this, right? In the beginning, and they had all their staff participating on Reddit to try to build some engagement. But anyway, the
I
point is,
actually heard that. Yeah.
yeah, they got over that hurdle though, and we are going to be in a very similar boat here, very very similar. Our system is not going to be attractive at all until everybody's in it. So we have, but they got past that hurdle, and I think we can get past that hurdle too. And
Oh.
and like I said, I think we're filling a niche that like I said, when something happens, and like Trump makes an announcement on tariffs or something like that, or people are going to be looking for a way to get more, to get more impact than just saying it on Twitter or on Facebook. Someplace where
I
it's more permanent, right?
I agree, but everybody offers them, um, like we won't be the only people offering them solutions.
We're the only ones offering them a place to put their opinion that stays there permanently. So that in 10 years, 100 years, somebody can look back and see exactly what people thought of Trump. And that's in a very organized manner. So I think people, that'll resonate with people a little bit. Another area, I think the future is going to be the biggest driver. I think people want to talk about the future, especially more optimistic people, which is getting fewer and fewer of them these days. But which is a big problem I find in the world. I think there's a huge trend towards depression right now. And anyway, a conversation about our future as a world, as a city, as a country and as a world, I think will be a really big driving force in the discussions that go on in our system. This is something people care about and are very, very worried about, and just the fact that we are creating a record here of how people are thinking about this, and that's what we'll emphasize. We are creating a record here, a very organized method of recording how people feel about the future. And I think that will help drive participation, at least in that area. So anyway, there's lots of different things like this that will drive certain groups. But another big driving force, I think, I really want to start emphasizing on getting some partners in the Far East, in South Korea, and maybe China, but I'm thinking more the democratic areas like South Korea and Taiwan and, I don't know, Singapore, all these places. Especially like Taiwan and South Korea, they have new democracies, and they are much more, their citizens are far more involved in democracy, like they're thinking about it all the time. South Korea right now, they had a president that was trying to take power, and it's been a huge ordeal there. And I'll guarantee you the hottest topic on their minds right now is their democracy at a far higher level than any of us, right? They just got their democracy. They've only been a democracy for, a couple of generations. Most of them still remember when they didn't have a democracy, right? So there's a huge a want, a need, a drive for democracy there. Not like we don't have that here. So anyway, I think in some countries it's going to be a much easier sell. And, once again, we start on a worldwide basis. And if we can get some real traction in the Far East, then that'll help drive more traction here as we see how they're using it. Then people here will be more inclined to use it. Anyway, I've been thinking about marketing. This is my point. I've been thinking about marketing and how we're going to get this thing out there. And I'm still very optimistic. I think there's a good opportunity to make this thing grow. So anyway, they're my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I don't know what to say exactly. Um,
Well, this is going to be a
I
big issue, and this is what we're going to be talking about a lot more in the near future. How we're going to actually market this thing. So, did you have any other questions other than marketing, about how we're going to start this thing?
I don't know. Nothing's really coming to mind. I think I'm getting a little worn out myself here.
Okay. You think we've had enough for today? You think?
Possibly, yeah.
I don't think we've come to any. I don't think we're on agreement about who's at fault as far as holding back the noosphere. But I think
Oh no, I think we both have our own viewpoints on that.
that's all fine. That doesn't really. We agree on the direction we have to go. That's the big thing, right?
Yeah, and I would add that we're heading in that direction, anyways.
Yes, but I think it could be 50, 100 years, and I think with our efforts, it could be 10 to 20.
Uh, I'm
Here's
not
another thing.
quite as I'm not quite as optimistic as you are,
Yeah.
but I still think that what's going on here is a good thing, and is getting people used to the idea, and is the direction to go in.
Yeah. I don't know if I finished this point before, but I just want to say it again. Um, we don't need everybody on thinking this is a good idea to make it happen. Just like Facebook, I plan we can impose this upon society, and either it takes off
Well,
or it doesn't.
I don't know how we're going to do that, but I mean, certainly Facebook did it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I also like to use this example. Um, um, George Washington. Nobody asked for democracy. George Washington imposed it upon us. He did not. We did not ask for democracy. Nobody was asking for democracy when America created democracy. That was mostly due to Washington. Washington.
That's
Hey,
possibly. It's difficult for me to know. I wasn't there.
no, but the more I think about it, the more I think nobody would have thought democracy was a good idea at the time. They went along with it because they didn't want another dictator or another king. And although they wanted to, there was a huge push to make George Washington king, and he refused that position. And then there were a whole bunch of others that stood up and said, "Well, if he doesn't want to be king, I'll be king." Right?
Yeah, right.
And yeah, pick me. Anyway, and when George looked at all these people and he thought, "No, these people are idiots," and that's where he said, "No, the only thing I could see is trying to create a republic."
Well, somebody made a saying, "No human is fit to hold power, least of all those who want it."
Mm-hmm. I think that was the real beauty here. I think that was the real beauty of George Washington, was the fact he ended up in power and he didn't want it.
Yeah.
I think that was key. It could have been hundreds of more years before we got a democracy. It was the fact that he just wanted to be a great general. That was his only real drive in life, was to be a great general. He had no interest in running a country.
He basically imposed democracy on America like some kind of a dictator.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Some of the biggest things that we have gotten in this world were imposed upon us. We did not ask for them. So anyway, that's a big example. I think that's one of the biggest examples, and thank God he did it. Thank fucking God he did it, man. Like, otherwise we'd still be way behind, if you ask me.
So who knows what would have happened to America had he not?
Yeah. That's to me, that's an unbelievable, almost a miracle of a situation, to have somebody that had that kind of power but did not want to take it. And
very rare.
Yeah, very, very, very rare. Very. We don't praise them enough. I'm a Canadian, but I praise that man.
Well, he wouldn't want it. He wouldn't want the praise. Yeah.
No, but he's definitely more deserving than anybody I can think of.
Definitely able to see outside of the culturally imposed lust to one up each other.
Yeah. So I think there was something else I wanted to say there, but yeah. So but from my point of view, we don't have to convince everybody, and I don't think there's any chance we're going to convince a majority of the population for direct democracy. I think we just put it out there and then it grows.
Well, the only thing that it has to show some teeth first before people are really gonna get into it.
Yeah, but I think we can do that. It might be easier in other countries, maybe not in America. America might not be the first adapter.
Well, we're in Canada, so I don't know what we're doing in America. America's a little strange.
Yeah.
It's a little intense, a little violent, a little crazy, and it's right. It's like you couldn't put yourself between the crosshairs better than to start fiddling with America.
Yeah.
Because it's not really its own country. Is this? And I don't think it is. It'd like to be. It has been, but not now. I don't think it is. It's global pressures control it. Businesses, and they control it as there's just no. And
well, that's a whole other topic there.
Go on forever.
And
I try to avoid.
Yeah, that brings me. Whenever I get into any of these side topics, though, I always end up steering right back to this, because a direct democracy, or moving towards direct democracy, is the only way I see solving these problems. I don't see any other way to solve them.
I agree 100%, but I'm not so sure that That, like, I think it's going to happen regardless of what we do. I've said that more than
Yeah.
once.
Oh,
It's more about technology opening the gate for us than anything else. And
well, the
I,
gate's open though. As you know, the gate's
uh,
open.
well,
It's
people
very
have access to a lot more information than they ever had. They can choose what information, they can publish information, and that's way more open than it was 4 or 5 decades ago. Way
Um,
more.
I'd like to point out one other thing, and I think you will agree with this because you see this as the future. It's pretty. It's obvious. If we are not successful, it is obvious there will be a success story eventually if humanity lives. You know, I mean, unless there's World War III and we're set back, right? But if we continue our advancement forward, I think you agree with me that it's quite obvious that something like this, very similar, is going to happen, right?
Oh,
So,
yes, for sure. But
absolutely,
just when?
absolutely, yeah. Just when?
When?
Okay. I'd like to point something else to you. You are being recorded right now, not just on this video, but on all our conversation on Reddit and everywhere else, and the book you wrote and everything else, right? You will be marked as one of the early people working in this project, working in
Maybe,
this regard. You are a
maybe,
part. You and
maybe somebody will steal all my ideas, put their name on it, get better publicity, and be the ones to present it, right?
yeah.
So
Well,
I,
I
I,
don't.
I never wrote it for that reason. I just wrote it because I felt it was interesting and I wanted to kind of organize my thoughts on it. And
Yeah, but it is
I'm
going
not.
to be. It
I'd
is.
like to sell some books, but other than that, I'm not too crazy about people going, "Oh yeah, he." No,
No,
I just. I'll be
no.
long gone. I'll be
But
long gone. I feel.
there's a satisfying feeling knowing that our organization, our little organization here, is going to be a part of history, whether or not we're successful or not. There is now, the internet records everything. Anybody in the future that wants to look back at the history of direct democracy are going to look at our efforts, and they're going to look at that as a part of the process, that of the ongoing process. We didn't start this, but we are a part of the process, and we are now recorded as part of the process.
I see it as a possibility, um, but it's like in my mind, really, we have a long way to go than than we wish, and it's not. It's like it could be a couple hundred years before people even have a reason to look back and say, how did this all start? And by then, there could be hundreds of other voices that have brought the topic to the forefront and have philosophized and tried to work
I,
it through.
I only see us right now. I don't see
Yeah.
anybody else working on this.
Well, it's
So,
your dream, so you should have a good view of it. There's
well,
nothing.
only this specific method of doing it is my dream. It's your
Yeah.
dream too. You had the same dream, right? I'm not the only one dreaming it, but we are a rarity, and even more rare are people that physically do something in this regard. And this is why I'm saying we are the only ones. I've been searching for a decade now. We are the only ones working in this regard of a no control moving towards direct democracy. There's
Doesn't that
nobody
scare
else
you?
working on this.
Doesn't that scare you a little bit? Like, where did all the other people go? Who? Because it's like it's not a complex idea,
No.
right? So where are the other people who tried to push this idea?
Well, they're
There
not.
must be some.
They're done. Show me some. There's no
Well,
record of anybody.
go
Show
to
me somebody.
Go to Chat GTP. You've got it right, and ask it how many people and organizations there are. What organizations are trying to start up some type of direct democracy system, hoping to influence politics? And
The
you will
key
get a
here,
list.
you will get a list, but the key here is a system that specifically no controls. There is nobody else out there that's putting together a system with no controls. This is the key thing I've been looking for over a decade. And if I ask GPT, I can't even Chat GPT thinks that every system should have a control. So,
Yeah, you have to have a big conversation with it first.
and so first I have to I have to get it to understand that I'm looking for something with no controls, and then I will guarantee you it won't find any. It will not find any. I've been looking for a decade.
I
You know,
definitely, I definitely think that that is a key element to the system. That is, it's not centrally controlled by anyone. That is like vastly redundant and stuff like that.
yes,
In order to keep it that safe. But
yeah,
so I'm on your side on that one for sure. 100%. It's just not gonna. It's just not gonna be a pure democracy any other way.
yeah,
But having said that, I see maybe a couple 100 years of partial direct democracies that, just like our direct democracy, gives people a little more agency than if it was a dictatorship, but we could still use more. And I think
yeah.
that's really going to be
I
the
think we
thing.
have to
Like
like
even our system, our opinion system is not going to have power. It's just
yeah,
going to be hopefully something that power takes heed of because it's smart enough to see that that's a good thing to do.
yes. Well, smart, and also, I mean, if you're a politician, it'll help you keep your job. You'll get reelected if you're doing what we're telling them to do, right?
If enough people are on the system, then yeah. But
Yeah,
at the same time, that means that any system that starts to actually grow and become significant is now going to be in the crosshairs of a lot of different forces.
yeah. Well, so far, I've only had one person that warned me of future violence, and I expect there'll be more of that. Where there's certain people that they're going to think this is actually insane, and that they should actually do something to stop us. So we can expect
Oh,
that to
for
come.
sure. Yeah, and if like I've never met any, but I guarantee you they're out there. Not just not just individuals, but groups of individuals. Like
Yeah,
the empires of this world. None of them are too excited about this, and they all will just they'll gladly use it if that's what they need to stay in power. But to really make it the way we want it to be, they will never let it.
no, they'll do whatever they can to slow it
Yeah.
down. Yeah, yeah. So we can expect some of that more in the future. Right now, they just laugh at us, though. Nobody's paying any attention. But eventually,
But
if we get somewhere, we're going to get a lot of opposition eventually.
they laugh at us, but you have to understand it's been 4 decades that this has been kind of possible, and there's been no real movement towards it that's had any kind of success.
Well, that was
Um,
kind of my point too. Like, I don't see a slow progression towards this. Like I said, we can't even get ranked choice voting, in Canada here. So that to me would be a slow progression. As soon as we realized ranked choice voting was better, we implemented it, right? And we'd be moving along. Everything's being held back from my point of view, and in like a spring, it's got to go way out there. When it's released, it's going to be a huge difference. So what we're
I
talking
think
about here is a really big change, and I think that that's what needs to happen. There's no way to incrementally get there because all these different entities holding it back. So we're not going to incrementally get to direct democracy. It's going to somehow there's got to be kind of like boom, and something big happens. And so
I'm
that's what
not
I'm hoping we are.
I'm not sure that that's even possible.
Well, I'm hoping.
Mm.
I think it's much less likely that we slowly progress there. I mean, it's like the printing press. Printing press was huge, and so there was nothing, and then boom, the printing press was a big advancement. And they didn't incrementally get to the printing press so much as all of a sudden the printing press was there and changed everything.
But
So
it incrementally started populating the world. It didn't just immediately that day. There's newspapers and all these books
no,
everywhere. It
no,
was a
you're right.
slow progression, so that I would call incremental.
Yeah,
And
yeah, maybe
but
I should say.
right away when the press was made, then yeah, you could print stuff, and just like right now, yeah, we can build
Yeah,
this system, but how will society react to it? There'll be people who is like, oh, that's not from the church and stuff, right?
yeah,
or that is from the church. Either both sides. The Bible was one of the first things printed en masse,
Yeah.
and that kind of tells you something about how society can be too, eh?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we have a printing press. We can now print the truth, and the first thing they print en masse is spiritual books.
Yeah.
Highly questionable.
I find that I find it really funny that people say things like people are what was it? People are moving away from science, or nobody believes in science anymore. I think that's crazy talk because nobody ever did in the past. I think
Yes.
people actually believe in science more today than they ever did. And people were far more religious in the past. They believed in science far less in the past. And
Well,
to say,
science is being misrepresented.
oh yeah, yes, but it always
People are
has been.
saying people are saying science is to believe what I say science says,
Yeah,
and science doesn't say anything.
that's right. Yeah, yeah.
So
Well,
that kind of rhetoric is very big, and so of course people are going, well, maybe science isn't that great if that's what we're supposed to call science.
yeah. But in the
Yep.
past, I still say people were more religious in the past and less believing in science in the past. So to me, we're advancing forward in that area. People think that we're regressing, but I don't think we're regressing like they think they are.
So well, it's like we go two steps forward or one step forward, two steps back, but over time we're still heading in a
Yeah,
better place.
that's right. Yes.
Um,
Yeah. That's the way I look at it too. Exactly like that. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, Ernest, I have probably talked you right out here. We had a pretty good discussion, I think.
yeah, I'm worn down and getting hungry.
Okay. Well, we'll call it a night. We'll let her go,
Okay.
and tomorrow we're talking again tomorrow morning.
Yes.
I got a new guy. Hopefully, he hasn't confirmed yet, but we'll have a new guy on with us tomorrow.
Okay.
All right. So I look
Talk to you
forward to
then.
seeing. Talk to you then. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thanks. Have a good day.
Bye.